Hello and welcome to The Key, Inside Higher Ed's news and analysis podcast. I'm Sarah Custer, editor-in-chief at Inside Higher Ed, and in this episode, we're sharing a discussion with three higher education leaders I chaired at the recent Student Success US event on the campus of UT Knoxville. For this conversation, I spoke with Donde Plowman, chancellor at UT Knoxville, Harry Williams, the former president of Delaware State University and the current president and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall Foundation, and Jonathan Koppell, president of Montclair State University. These are three leaders with incredibly different backgrounds, leading different institutions, but facing a lot of similar challenges to lead with integrity and to progress student success. In this discussion, they spoke about how they make hard decisions, how they know when they're doing the right thing, and what advice they have for folks working in an institution to support a leader. Just a note that this was recorded before the presidential election on November 5th, which we do discuss, and it's interesting to hear them speak about how they're preparing their campus's response to the election results and their commitments to civic dialogue no matter the outcome. We're grateful to the Gates Foundation for sponsoring this episode.
This episode of The Key is brought to you by the Gates Foundation, working to ensure that race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status are no longer predictors of educational success. Learn more about the Foundation's work to improve digital teaching and learning, advance institutional transformation, and more at usprogram.gatesfoundation.org.
We're now going to talk a little bit about leadership, but really from the lens of leading with intentionality and integrity. So in addition to Donde, joining us, we have Harry Williams, who's the president and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and a former president of Delaware State. And we have Jonathan Koppell, the president of Montclair State University. Welcome, everyone. So as we know, leadership in higher education is a difficult job. One might ask, why would anybody want to be a university president? Especially when we consider the term times that are getting shorter and shorter. I think the average is about 6 or 7 years, shorter even for women. It's a difficult job, and you have to make a lot of hard decisions. So that's where I want to start, is asking about how do you make those hard decisions? Donde, I'm going to give that to you.
I haven't made any hard decisions. I don't know why you'd call on me first. I found that knowing what to do isn't hard. It's pretty obvious, even in the most extreme crises, what you need to do and what's the right thing to do. I think what gets hard is figuring out how you're going to communicate what you're doing, how you're going to bring people with you in that decision. And we brought in, when I first came here, a crisis communicator expert who was trying to help us with, this was pre-pandemic. I mean, what a joke when you think now about, let's come up with some hypothetical crises that we could have to respond to. But she said, if you do the right thing, you will say the right thing. And I've never forgotten that. Even as we're in the midst of trying to do the right thing again, if we do the right thing, talking about what we've done will be easy. When companies or organizations get in trouble with what they're saying, it's usually because they're trying to cover up for some part of this wasn't really what they wanted to do. So I think thinking about how you're going to talk about it to the public, to your colleagues, while you're making the decision is important.
Jonathan, do you want to come in and maybe pick up that point about how communication is so important when you're making these hard decisions?
Sure. And let me just say, so Montclair State University, because most people are like, I don't know what that is. So Montclair State University is the second largest university in New Jersey, about 24,000 students, majority minority student population, Hispanic serving institution, and one of a handful of institutions that are those things, but also an R2 research university, a community engaged university. And I say those things in part to answer the opening premise, which is, why does somebody want to be a president? It is a funny thing when you tell people you're a university president, you get this kind of look of pity on the person's face, like, oh, so sorry for you. But I actually think it's still a great job because you can do a lot of good in the world and you can have an incredible effect on people's lives. I think that the part to Donde's point is about communication is you can never say enough the why. And I think one of the hardest parts about these jobs is saying the same thing again and again, because you get bored saying the same thing again and again, but you have to say the same thing, the why, more times than you can count in order to reach people and have them understand why you are doing the things. It's not because you're ignorant. It's not because you don't understand. It's because sometimes difficult decisions have to be made. In my experience, people are okay with that if you explain why. But it becomes exhausting sometimes to keep saying the same thing and to be greeted with skepticism about your sincerity or rationale, and people think there's a hidden agenda or something like that. So I think that that's probably one of the most fundamental lessons of leadership in any context, which is don't assume that people are giving you the benefit of the doubt or that they heard you give the same speech 10 times before, just because you heard yourself do it.
Harry, you've got an interesting perspective on this panel and kind of being post-presidency, but then also now leading an organization. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you are thinking about making hard decisions, and maybe give us an example of a hard decision you've had to make over your career?
First of all, Sarah, thank you. Thank you for the Inside Higher Education for putting on this panel. Thank you, Chancellor, for hosting this incredible event. Congratulations to all of you. I'm going to claim it right now. All of you guys are going to be college presidents. Okay, that's going to happen. That's why you're here. Some of you are already presidents, so you're going to get it because it's all about focusing and helping students. I'm going to do my 30-second plug about the Thurgood Marshall College Fund real quick. It's an organization that represents 55 historically black colleges and PBIs in the United States. It's the largest organization in America that focuses on the black college community. We work with the public HBCUs. It's named after one of the greatest individuals in the world, Thurgood Marshall, Justice Marshall, who was a leader, someone who was bold, someone that did something that was hard and difficult. And that's what decision is all about, and that's what leadership is all about, making those difficult decisions and then sticking with it, regardless of who's coming at you. They're coming at you at all different angles, but when you see something and you know it's right, you go with it. And that's the test of how you move. And one thing that I'm impressed with our chancellor here is that she took on something that's very, very difficult. And you all know how hard it is to move retention. It is very, 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 very hard. And to do it in a 4-year period, it took boldness, it took action, not a lot of talk, not a lot of meetings, action, moving forward and using it, clear example, and seeing the chancellor on a daily basis. I'm sure people see her and they run and hide in the corner because she knows she's going to bring up this thing about student success. And that's the thing that is so exciting about this conversation today, is about leadership and about how do you move your organization forward. Some of you might be struggling right now and how to get that done. But when you're in a senior level position, you're not just in that position by accident. You're there because you have some type of skill, some type of value that's going to help move something to the next space. And that's going to help. The reason why I became a college president, I was very intentional, very focused. I said unequivocally, I want to be a college president at a historically black college and university. Full stop. Wasn't interested in anything else but that. And that was my vision. That was my focus, because I knew that those institutions have made a major difference in this country, and they have transformed the lives of so many individuals, and they continue to do that on a daily basis. So when you have that internal conviction and you move it and you live it, and it's not that difficult. It's just required you become that face of that individual when it comes to change, and change is very exciting. One thing that I did when I was at Delaware State that was very difficult was to get legislation passed. Anybody ever worked with a General Assembly to get a bill passed? And to get it passed in the first session, to get the governor to call the General Assembly back in because there was one senator who did not like the bill because I didn't come by and kiss the ring. That's hard, but we did it. And to have someone tell you when you say you're going to do it, you are crazy. This will never happen. We have never done this ever. Leadership is doing things that's difficult and hard.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
I totally appreciate both what you said. I want to go back to the thing about saying it again and again. Someone told me once that it takes 7 times for the message until it penetrates. So 7 times. And one of the things that we do here pretty darn well, I think, is the use of social media for telling our story and kind of bragging on ourselves. So I think my hope is that I always see alums and say, my job is to make your diploma more valuable. That is my job. That's all of our jobs. And when you hire good people and turn them loose, like big things happen. And I think you can't get there in 4 years on much of anything if you're the micromanager and, that kind of thing. So I think that's another aspect of leadership, is the kind of people you hire and then let them go. And that's certainly what's happened in the student success area. When I meet with alumni groups all over the country, people we're trying to raise money from, the first thing I talk about is student success. And I just talk about it everywhere. And then people are coming up to me and saying, boy, it's really good what's happening there. And I think that's an important part of the leader's job. It's kind of the cheerleader part, real important.
Championing the people in your
Sarah,
organization.
can I add a thing? It's so important what the chancellor just said. She said she's not a micromanager, which is critical to someone being able to do their job and do it really well. But her presence got to be felt. And by walking around and maybe not saying anything, that's important. That's important for people to see her. It's important for people to see you in this. That's what leadership is all about. When I served on the panel of the NCAA, and Mark Emmert, who was the president of the NCAA organization, he was a great president at LSU and Washington University. And the great thing about Mark, he would show up in the room and he would be there. Not necessarily trying to dominate the discussion, but we knew that his presence was there, and that was important to move things forward.
Harry, and just a bit before, you mentioned a few things about a presidency that I think are probably shared aspects of the job, an inner drive, a really laser focus on what you're doing and a vision. The many hats that presidents have to wear, being a lobbyist, being a fundraiser, being a presence on campus, being a team manager, having that relationship with the board. It's also kind of lonely at the top, which I think is where a lot of the question about integrity comes in. And I guess just having the courage of your convictions and really knowing what it is you're trying to do. Jonathan, I want to ask you how, because I know that you've made a interesting decision. Interesting is not the right word, but it's maybe a left field decision about Bloomfield College. And I would like you to just talk about that, especially in the context of maybe going against the grain a little bit and making a surprising decision that maybe not everybody was like, that's okay, interesting move.
So a little backstory. So Bloomfield College was, and I don't know what it was, but you'll understand, was New Jersey's only predominantly black institution, so it relates directly to Harry's work. The only predominantly black institution, 4-year predominantly black institution in New Jersey. New Jersey has no HBCUs. Like a lot of small independent colleges, it was on the edge of survival. And COVID kind of pushed it over the edge where it was not going to survive. It's about 7 miles from Montclair State University. I felt, I'm giving you the condensed version, I felt given our mission about being inclusive and accessible to the full range of the population of New Jersey and creating a place where students could be successful, where they could achieve their potential, for us to sit there and watch Bloomfield, New Jersey's only PBI, just go out of business just seemed wrong. And even though all of the rhetoric is about the demographic cliff and how nobody's going to go to college and all that sort of stuff, I felt that we could do better from a student success point of view. The retention and graduation rates at Bloomfield weren't what they could be. And we could also give fuller life to its identity as a PBI. Harry and I were talking about this even before. Yes, it was demographically predominantly black, but culturally, from a curriculum point of view, from a student experience point of view, it wasn't leveraging any of that for purposes of student success. And so even though I was about 6 months into my first presidency, I was like, we have to do this. It would be wrong to do anything else. And so I got my board to understand why I thought this was consistent with our mission, that we could do it from a fiscally prudent point of view, and we moved forward. Very complicated. I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into. Full disclosure, still the right thing to do, but I didn't quite understand. And I think an opportunity to learn a lot about the future of higher education, which is going to be about collaboration. And I know Chancellor is talking about a partnership with ASU, an institution I know quite well. That's where I was for 11 years. I think that that's going to be how we succeed in the years ahead, is by thinking about how institutions, even if they don't merge into single entities, how they become strategically entwined. And so I thought it was the right thing to do. But in terms of the topic of this discussion, a lot of skepticism on my own campus about why are we doing this? Why are we worrying about other people's problems? How does this affect us? And I don't think 7 times was enough in that case. I still have to keep perorating on the why, because it does seem like an added burden, but it goes back to the mission of the university. And I really don't think people are motivated. I don't care how charismatic a leader you are. If there's not a reason why we're doing it, if there's not a why that matters, it's very hard for people to motivate. You can't move the student success needle if people don't think it matters. And I think that's probably the highest responsibility of a university president, is to give people a sense of the importance of their work, of the importance of the mission. Bloomfield fit into that, and I've asked people to do a lot of work to make that function. It's working, right? We're saving a lot, in terms of economies of scale and showing that. But it's only been doable because I think the university has embraced the idea that for us to have stood by and watched this important college fold would have been inconsistent with our mission. And so that's why we are where we are. I think it's an important project. Delaware State did something similar with a private school called Wesley, right? And so I think this is something that institutions are going to have to confront. University of Tennessee added a campus in a not totally dissimilar way. Martin, I think UT Martin, isn't that?
UT Martin's one of our 5 campuses.
But that was a private school that I think became.
Oh no, Martin Methodist. We just recently acquired them. They were a Methodist school.
Right. So, I mean, I think I think this is going to be more of, and people are going to have to ask the question, how is this consistent with the mission of public serving universities?
Sir, can I build on something that Jonathan said that I think is important in terms of that he got a great example of doing something that's very hard and something that may not align with everybody in terms of how they think and what should be done. We all remember the pandemic, right? And when that happened so quickly on us, and we all had to figure out what we're going to do next, everybody had to go home. What we were doing in Washington, D.C., we were worried about HBCUs closing, because we were worried about that because in reality, these institutions have been underfunded. And we were very intentional and very focused in talking to our federal officials and legislators and being unapologetic about the responsibility that they have in terms of preserving these institutions. We used a word that we wouldn't normally use when we're talking to state representatives. We said we expect billions of dollars to go to HBCUs. And that was unheard of. They even say that. They even think that. We went in, we were very clear. And if we didn't say it, there was no way these institutions would have been able to survive this pandemic that we just went through. The federal government leaned in and gave over $17 billion to HBCUs. That was because of the leadership and the advocacy in Washington, D.C., because it was a bold thing and it was the right thing to do. So sometimes that's what you have to do, and you cannot worry about whether or not it's going to make someone's feelings, you're going to hurt someone's feelings. But at the end of the day, if you're helping someone, this is all about student success. If you're helping someone, you're doing the right thing.
And I think that hits on what Jonathan was saying about collaboration and working together, which I think is something that institutions are just going to have to do more and more of, considering the financial sustainability that a lot of them are finding themselves in. But it's not something that institutions have historically done that well. It's a competitive market. You're fighting for students. You're fighting on the football field. It's not in the DNA of institutions. But I wanted to pick up on the ASU partnership, Donde, and that I think is a good example of an innovative way of working with an institution and creating that partnership that people wouldn't necessarily expect. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. We recently, we've been 2 years now working together with ASU on them helping us accelerate our implementation of a new online coursework. programs. And the programs are designed not really for our own residential students. We have almost 1 million people in Tennessee who have some college credit and never finished college. And at the same time, we've got all these vacancies, openings in jobs throughout Tennessee. So it's like another disconnect. So if we can get, it's part of our land grant mission, I think, is to meet people where they are. And so we engaged with ASU. Michael Crow is such an incredible thought leader in higher education, and what he said to me was, why should we just keep competing with each other? And he didn't mean our institution and his, but in higher ed, that's what we do. So we duplicate services, we duplicate a whole lot of things. And so his challenge was, Donde, why don't you guys think about partnering with us? And I said, well, what would that look like? And he said, I don't know. Let's figure it out. And so we've had a team from our campus and theirs working together. We're launching some new online programs here that ASU has advised us about how to, here's mistakes we made, don't do this. Here's what we wish we'd done, do this. And also allowing us to use some of their courses. So when a student signs on to the first program, their general education requirements may be met in part with courses that say something like UTK in partnership with ASU. That's an unusual thing to try to do. So we'll let you know how successful this is in another 2 or 3 years. We've pushed some resources into it, and I'm really optimistic about it. I don't think it makes sense for all of us to just keep competing with each other. We've had ongoing conversations with Mississippi State Community College right here in Knoxville. We've had different partnerships with them, and I want us to keep plugging and finding the magic sauce there. I think there's a lot more that we public four-year institutions can be doing in partnership with the community colleges and actually the tech colleges. But we just get in our silos because that's just all we know to do. So I'm excited about those opportunities.
About a week from today, there's something happening across our country. I'm going to be careful with where I go with this question. Higher education and the mission of higher education has been ever present in this campaign more than it has been historically in our country. And a lot of times that kind of goes against the mission of higher education, and the value of higher education has been called into question. And a lot of the values and the mission of people in this room around student success is really being brought up. I'm thinking about people saying Kamala Harris was a DEI hire. Tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about the current political climate, and especially post November 5, how you're going to continue to lead with that intentionality and shepherd your campus through what will inevitably be a difficult time no matter what happens. Harry, do you want to start with that one?
Why are you picking on me to start that question?
You made eye contact, Harry. It's your fault. You were making eye contact with me.
First of all, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund is bipartisan. We work with both sides because when it comes to education, there is no R or D. Everybody, we all need it. So we work with both sides. But the reality, this is a very important election. We have done our part at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund in helping our campuses with their responsibility of making sure the students have a clear understanding of their right to vote. We don't tell people who to vote for, but we want them to participate in this process. And so we've initiated a big social media campaign across the country, reminding people that 1965, the Civil Rights Act that passed, some people lost lives for that. And it's a privilege to be able to vote in this country, and it's a responsibility that we all should take very seriously. And so we have done a lot of educating. And what is exciting about this for the historically black college and university perspective, there's a candidate that graduated from one of our institutions, and that is exciting. Not saying that we're saying who to vote for, but the reality to have someone at the highest level to graduate from one of our institutions says a lot about this great country, and it says a lot about the people who are running in this election. So it's very, very important. And the federal government, as I stated, play a critical role in funding higher ed, and it's a funding stream that we need, especially when it comes to research dollars coming in. And we want to make sure that candidates have a clear understanding of this. One of the things about being an advocacy group in Washington, D.C., we get to meet with all the candidates. And I can recall meeting with Bernie Sanders, and we were talking to his team, and he said that if he was elected president, he was going to make college free for everybody. That's a pretty interesting thing to grapple with. But the concept was that, it shouldn't be expensive like what that's what we're grappling with, the cost of education, and people should have an opportunity to get a good quality education without having to lose everything when it comes to their finances from that perspective.
Jonathan is our resident political scientist.
So, look, this is unusual for higher education because while we've always, I think, had a thread of trying to encourage people to be involved in democracy, and I'm part of a bunch of different things about presidents, the Institute for Citizens and Scholars, and all in that are all about us playing a role of educating the citizenry and encouraging students to be engaged. So I agree with everything there. But for the first time in my consciousness, higher education is itself an issue. Now, I think that that's very intentional. It's being done for purposes of dividing and so on. But if we're being honest about it, part of the reason it works is because we've invited it. And we've invited it in a couple of different ways. One, I think we have to own the fact that, and we're talking a little bit about this morning, half the people in this country who went to college don't have a degree. And that's why you're talking about student success. And so there are a lot of people who are angry and feel like they were let down because we invited them in as an industry, so to speak. We invited them in. We said, if you come, if you work hard, if you pay tuition, you'll get a degree and your life will be better. And it didn't work out that way. First of all, a lot of the students who never got a degree. So now they have debt, they feel like they failed, and we put them in that position. Beyond that, some 20% of people who have a college degree are not in a position economically that they wouldn't have been in without a college degree. That's reality. We have to own it. We have to say, what are we doing to prepare people for it? So in some sense, we made ourselves vulnerable. Another set of institutions, I don't think that this is Tennessee. I don't think that it's Montclair. I don't think it's Delaware. But another set of institutions have lost sight of their mission and necessity to serve the public good. And I'm not just talking about public universities. Every private university doesn't pay taxes. They have a public mission too. And they are subsidized too. And they've lost sight of that and have disappointed in that. Now, you gave a little twist at the end with the reference to the DEI piece. And I think there, we could do a better job of saying, what does it mean to be inclusive? What does it mean to give everybody an opportunity to succeed? I'm not going to get into the slander about somebody's achievements being only about their identity. I mean, there's really nothing meritorious about that at all. But in terms of what we can do a better job of saying we're in the business of letting human beings achieve their full potential. And that's what inclusivity means. And I don't think, to the point about repeating, I don't think you can repeat that enough. And I think we've sort of basked in our own virtue for 50 years and said, well, we don't have to explain. It's self-evident how good we are. It's self-evident how important we are. And that was a mistake. That was a mistake, and now we have to be more assertive about the value of higher education and more assertive about our own commitments to the communities we serve and the students that we're educating, and in some sense double down on our public purpose and public mission to win back the confidence of the people. I mean, I don't think this is a you give one speech kind of thing. This is an orientation, and it's a recognition that that's part of our job. Add that to the list. That's part of our job as presidents, but everybody, it's part of our job. Otherwise, we leave ourselves vulnerable to the kind of scurrilous mischaracterizations that have taken root.
Donde, I'll allow you to pick that up, but could you also tell us about how you're thinking of November 6th and how you're going to shepherd your campus through this?
Sure. One of the things that happened to us about 3 years ago is preparing us for November 6th, and that was there was bipartisan legislation in our General Assembly to establish the American Civics Institute, which is here, housed in our relatively new Howard Baker School of Public Policy. All those things fit together. It was bipartisan legislation. There's no other institute like this in the country that was founded that way. It's usually one side or the other wants this think tank kind of thing. Secondly, the attention we're giving to a former senator here, Howard Baker, who was known He was the one that says, what did you know and when did you know it during the Watergate hearings? I'm looking at half this crowd who doesn't even know what I'm talking about with Watergate. I get that. Go look it up. It's seriously important. But he's known for saying things like, it's really important to listen to the person across the aisle because they might be right. I mean, that sounds like a radical statement in today's world. Somebody on the other aisle, across the aisle, might be right. And so this Civics Institute is now up and running in the new Howard Baker School of Public Policy. The Civics Institute has been hosting speakers on both sides of every issue. Students are learning how to do that. The focus of the Institute is on two things: learning to respectfully interact with people from the other side, and secondly, learning civics. We have a whole bunch of people, not just young people, people in the country who have no idea what is the difference between the Supreme Court in the state and the big Supreme Court, or three branches of government. It's really lost. And so I'm all of those things are leading up to this. The Civics Institute and the Baker School, on the night of the one debate we had, about 100 kids were over there, 100 students, with somebody leading what they might hear from one side and from the other side. Then they watched the debate, then they discussed it. That's what should happen at college campuses. And the last thing I'll say, I've had the chance to personally observe this. I've been, for the last 2 years, this will be the third spring, co-taught a course in the Civics Institute with a former governor, Governor Haslam. And it's on Leading with Courage is the title of it. And one of the things that I can say from that experience is students do not like all this vitriol. They are sick of it. And the risk for us is they're going to disengage if we don't pull them back to figuring out how to have conversations that are passionate, but we disagree. And that we should be able to do that on a college campus. That is what we should be good at. And honestly, we've got to own the fact that we've lost our way on that. And a lot of times it just feels like you're only hearing from one side. And so I can't say what's going to happen. You know, we're prepared for everything from total silence, nothing happens, to whatever might possibly happen. I'm confident that the work we've done is going to help in some ways. Keep it focused on respectful interaction. That's my hope. I feel I should knock on wood as I say that. But campuses should be the place where people can disagree, but do it with respect. And that's what's lost. And the students see that. And they don't want to be part of those kind of encounters. So our goal is in that course where as they leave, it's like not only register to vote, run for office, get on a board, see yourself on a city council, get engaged. So that's how we're pushing it.
We've got just a couple minutes left. And I just wanted you guys to give some advice to people in this room who are looking to you as institutional leaders, who will be looking at their own institutional leaders and thinking about how they can help them achieve the mission of the institution, help them lead with integrity and intentionality. So if you guys could just speak to everybody in the room and give them one piece of advice of how they can do their bit to help progress the institution. Donde, can I start with you?
I've always used this definition of leadership. It's the willingness to act, not talk. It's the willingness to act. And that needs to take place way down in the organization. So if you would commit yourselves to acting and getting things done that are in line with the mission, that's going to help the university and help your career. So I just encourage everybody. There's a moment in every day when every one of you steps forward as a leader. Just keep going. Keep that up. We need you.
Harry.
Yeah, if I had to kind of give you something to think about, I would say in your journey that you're on a journey. Be bold and audacious. Bold and audacious. And you think about those two words and let that drive you. And it's okay to be pushed out of your comfort zone. It's okay to leave your institution to go to another institution. to work. It's okay to leave your community. It's okay. But just step outside and just be bold, because you've already demonstrated that you have it. So how are you going to push it to that next level?
So I'm going to say something really different. I was thinking, this is uninspiring. Be specific. Don't say, we ought to do something about. Oh, really? What? Because I've got plenty of people telling me we ought to do something. What should we do? And specifically, how do we do it? And how are you going to work with the other people around the university to make that happen? All of you in the student success space know that this cuts across multiple parts of the university if you want to achieve anything. So just saying, well, we ought to do something and I should be in charge. Okay, well, that's not going to do anything. How are you going to put together a team? What exactly do you want to do? What is the basis for which that's your recommendation? And how do we get started? I often say, like, okay, so let's say I say yes. What are we going to do tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Like, what does that actually mean? And it's like, and I think that's how you can make a difference, because people in this position, we're hungry to take action. Donde was saying, like, oh my God, it's been 2 years. I know exactly what she's saying. Like, we talked about this 2 years ago, and now we're still having the same conversation. So I don't need you to say, like, we really ought to do something. I need you to say, what are we going to do tomorrow to advance towards the goal? And so I would encourage people not just to say big ideas, but present plans. Think about what the steps are and how you're going to bring people along. That's how change actually happens. That leadership is not just big ideas and inspiring speeches. It actually is concrete steps towards an objective.
Great. Be specific, be bold, be audacious, take action. There you go. Please join me in thanking our panelists this morning. It's been wonderful. Three things stood out for me in this conversation. First, that leadership is doing things that are difficult and hard. That might sound obvious, but the role of a university leader is increasingly difficult, and one that may even be breaching the bounds of a job a single person can do. It takes an incredible amount of resolve to lead an institution and a savviness to communicate your vision that brings people along the journey. The second is the importance of hiring good people, and even more important, championing them and then staying out of their way. And third, one that we don't hear enough in higher ed, I think, leaders need to work to find the magic sauce that they might be able to create with a fellow institution, whether it's of the same cloth, in their own state, or across the country. There's so much potential to be untapped through collaborations with other colleges, great and small. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Key, and thanks again to the Gates Foundation for supporting us to produce this episode. We'll see you next time.